Awesome. So one of the species that's particularly affected by the threat of white nose syndrome is the little brown bat, the Myotis lucificus. We call them Mylu. They're a particularly long-lived bat. They can live up to 34 years. They exhibit promiscuous mating structure, so individuals of both sexes will mate with multiple individuals. Breeding generally takes place in the fall, but fertilization actually takes place in the spring. So that's when the egg is fertilized. And so Milus are resident bats, so they don't migrate. And they'll often roost in caves or rock crevices out east. We generally find them in rock crevices out west since we don't have that many caves. At least in the Sierra Nevada, we do have some caves in Carlsbad Cavern. There have been up to 183,000 bats observed in one hibernating cave out east. However, the average colony size is usually about 9,000. And if you think about that, up to 100% of the bat population can be affected by white nose syndrome. So there's anywhere from 9,000 to 183,000 bats that could be affected if white nose syndrome comes into a particular cave. And we all experience COVID-19. Imagine if, COVID-19 was happening, but no one was making drugs to help us get through that. And it was just spreading throughout populations. So that's kind of what's happening with white nose syndrome. Yeah.
Are they making something?
Yeah, there is active research in making like probiotics that help with the fungus to curtail the fungus. And there's actually a vaccine that's been working on for decades now. But a lot of funding was kind of sequestered away from that research after COVID-19. There's just a negative perception, but scientists are trying to keep it going. And the vaccine, it does appear to be effective. So,
how do you apply?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yes, so you have to go in and you have to vaccinate every single bat, which poses another thing of disturbance. You don't want to really disturb bats in winter, but it is, them coming out of torpor once is a lot better than coming out of torpor multiple times. So it is worth it, especially in these caves with a lot of bats in them. Yeah. So white nose syndrome has been coming over to California, but there's kind of a difference. I mean, many of you have been out east and out west. Our winters are different. So out west, there's more solitary hibernation, and they're actually observing more solitary hibernation out east. It seems like the bats might be kind of shifting into more solitary hibernation, and maybe it's from white nose syndrome. Maybe it's just a product of there are fewer bats, so we're seeing that more often. But the difference of terrain and weather patterns leading to contrasting wildlife behavior between the East and West Coast presented an important avenue of study. So the Big Wall Bats program has been working on developing methods to take bat research that's normally done on the ground up into the vertical landscape. And that's because bats are able to fly somewhere in seconds that could take humans days to access, and that's if they have the technical expertise to work on high angle terrain. And so we're really lucky in Yosemite because we have climber biologists, and so we can do that. It's kind of like historically research tracking bats to cliffside roosts and subsequently characterizing them kind of stopped if the roost was anywhere off the ground that you couldn't see easily. So we've kind of used Yosemite as a unique opportunity to expand our knowledge of cliff-dwelling bats. And thus the Big Wall Bat program was hatched, and it focuses on developing fundamental knowledge of cliff-dwelling bats in the Pacific West. And while our methods can be used anywhere, they've been particularly important for identifying and studying populations in more dispersed western portions of the country, like Yosemite. And Yosemite is a bit of a biodiversity hotspot in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. We have 17 different species that reside or migrate through Yosemite National Park. These are them. And so Yosemite actually contains the smallest bat, which is the canyon bat. It's in the top left corner of the second Brady Bunch slide. They weigh about 3 grams. So for reference, a nickel weighs 5 grams. Very small. Yeah. It's almost like nothing. Yeah. We also have North America's largest bat, which is the Western Mastiff bat, which is catty corner. It's right here. They're a bonneted bat, so they kind of have like a bonnet on their head. And that bat is 6 to 8 inches long with a 22-inch wingspan. They'll weigh up to 84 grams. So we have 6 species in Yosemite that are California species of special concern. 11 species have been found to carry PD, and 6 are susceptible to whiteness syndrome. So some things that we knew at the onset of the Big Wall Bat program were that bats were in elusive taxa with complex life histories. They're difficult to study due to their mobility, their nocturnal nature, and small body size. You can't distinguish a species in flight by eye. Radio transmitters that are small enough to fit on bats have relatively recently been created, but haven't been around for a long time. And they also have really low recapture rates. You think about all of the bats flying around and trying to catch the same bat middle of the night is kind of hard. Yeah. And so roost selection, and roosts are where bats reside, differs within and among species. So males versus non-parous females, not non-parous meaning not pregnant, versus pregnant females might select for different roosts. And pregnant females congregating maternity roosts might select for a different roost type. Different species are more or less selective and sensitive to disturbance. So some species might roost in a house, in the rafters of like a house, and other species want to be in the most remote part of the park and never think about what a human is or see one ever. And even if you know of a roost where there are bats, they seemingly switch roosts at random. So one of the best stories that I have about this is our first year we discovered this roost that was in a crack, and it was 22 feet of bats. And you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We went back a couple of times to just like study them, see how many bats were there. And then National Geographic heard about the bats. And so they wanted to come and take photos of them. We're like, we got you. This is going to be so great. We'll take you to this place. It's really easy to access. And so they send a photographer out, and we went to the roost, and they weren't there that day. And then we went back the next week, and they were back. So, yeah, they're very elusive.
Are any of these pictures with the rock climbers you?
Yeah, this is me down here. And that's my technician, or my old technician, Sean. He's my field lead. So, yeah. And we wear masks, not for us, but to keep the bats safe. Because we might have COVID. We don't want to transmit COVID to the bats or any other kind of zoonotic disease. So their rock crevices, scree, bark, talus all offer potential habitat for bats, especially in zones with limited access to caves such as Yosemite. And several studies have detected bat activity in talus slopes in the winter, and we're presuming that those are hibernation sites. But the Sierra is actually, we actually really don't know where large hibernacula are in the Sierra, if there are them. The bats just kind of like fly away, and we don't know where they go in the winter, and that's a huge question mark for science.
Yeah. So the bats don't winter in this wall in Yosemite all winter long.
No, so they need to get their body temperature like down to near freezing, and this wall in particular probably only gets to in the mid 50s, so it's not quite cold enough. Yeah, so they'll just disappear from this.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a crack here. This was actually the 22-foot track that we found, and we were like, well, you can just take photos of us looking like we are looking at them. This is on the rostrum. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so much of our knowledge was pretty surface level, and we don't have a deep understanding of decision making that bats make for rock roosting bats. And we don't know what characteristics of rock to look for targeting different species and selecting for roosts, if any. So given the complexity of the task, the Big Wall Bat program first worked on honing in on how to safely access roosts, and then most effectively utilize our three people for all of the rocks in Yosemite, 3-person bat team. And yeah, the Merced Canyon, where Yosemite Valley is located, contains 50 square kilometers of exposed rock. So that's potential habitat for bats. So if you think about that 3-gram tiny bat body size, it doesn't even register as a fraction of the total rock mass that is exposed. So we had a pretty monumentous task in front of us. And so we developed methods to kind of tackle that task in the most effective way possible. And we use 6 different methods to find and monitor bats. Our methods include scanning the base of cliffs to look for guano. So we will just go scan on the base of a cliff to look for bat poop. And that's because bats will be up above and their poop will come down and you'll see it on the ground, and then you'll know, oh, okay, I can look here. And that's actually been effective in a couple of scenarios. We also carry out climbing feature surveys if we see particular features that kind of look batty. This has been more useful as we have characterized more and more roosts, and we kind of know what we're looking for. Like the Western Mastiff bat that I talked about before, they really like roosting in these rock flakes that look like you could just pull them off the wall and they're just going to fall to the ground, but they love them. So we'll go around and we'll be like, that looks like a Mastiff roost. And we've just found roosts kind of by knowing that search image. We'll also, we have a great community outreach. And so we'll tap on climbers and we'll engage with the public to find out about roosts. As climbers are going out and going climbing, we have a reporting system. And that allows our team of 3 to expand to a team of thousands. Because if more people know about the Big Wall Bat program, if they see a bat while they're out climbing, they're like, hey, I was on the nose, I saw a bat. We're like, thank you, that's awesome, we'll go follow up. And then, we have that observation. We also use thermal imagery to carry out emergence surveys to find and monitor roosts. So that one really, we call it Chauncey Flake, that I was talking about for the Western Mastiff bat, we set up a thermal camera underneath it. This is actually the Mastiff roost. And we'll go there at night, set up a thermal camera, and then watch bats as they fly out, if there are bats in there. Sometimes you're just recording rock for a few hours. We also use ultrasonic audio recording units to find out which species are at each roost. So we'll use our thermal imagery to see when a bat emerges from a roost, and then when they're emerging, we'll see what kind of signatures over on the right picked up, and each bat has their own unique echolocation signature, and so we can identify species by that signature. So even if we didn't know what species this roost was, we could go into our audio files and then determine what species is there. And then we also use radio tracking, and that's where we attach a little GPS, which is about the size of a chocolate chip, to the backs of bats that we catch. And then that allows us to follow bats around the park. And the one great thing about studying bats is they stay put throughout the entire day because they're sleeping. So they're elusive at night and they're really hard to follow at night, but in the middle of the day, you're just waking up. I mean, you're not waking them up, but you're going to like see where they're going to sleep, which is great. This right here is actually a Mexican three-tailed bat. Yeah, they're also a bonneted bat. So, but yeah, good eyes.
You report your data now?
No, but that'd be great. We actually, my program was working on developing a database for like actually I'll go into this in a little bit, but for compiling data for other researchers to like collect information for where they observe bats along coasts. Yeah, so after kind of like honing in on all of those methods for studying bats, and how to approach and access roosts and collect data effectively, we needed a consistent way to like qualitatively and quantitatively characterize cliff roosts for future analyses. And so after like a lot of spelunking and many discussions within our team and with collaborators, we honed in on recording the following metrics. So we record the location of where the bat is. So that's the formation name, the route, the pitch, the height above ground. And then we record the wall and feature aspects, so the direction that they're in, the feature type, if it's a flake, if it's a crack, or if it's a roof. And I just kind of want to make a note here that I'm not sure how many of you are climbers or have climbed or like have family members that are climbers, but it's like frighteningly inconsistent when you start to like see how climbers describe features. You know, what's a roof, what's a crack? Roofs and flakes, roofs are flakes and flakes are cracks, and there's no consistency throughout. It's kind of going by vibe, I think is what people say now. So we had to like really rethink and redesign the way that we think about roofs and cracks, and we actually were like, okay, well, if you can slide a piece of paper behind it like this, then that means it's a flake. And if you're going like this, then that means it's a roof. So, you know, we wanted to be really consistent throughout when we're developing this way to record metrics. We also take in the feature's orientation and direction of opening. So, you know, is it facing the direction of opening south? The total width of the feature that the bats are present in, the minimum and maximum width of that feature as well. So like how much space the bat has, the number of exits the roost has. If the roost, we document the roost structure. So is it simple and there's one exit, or is it complex where we don't even know how many exits there are? We also record bat sign. So sometimes there's urine streaking, or you see that guano down below. We obviously record the species that are in the roost, if there's co-roosting, as well as like the number of bats that are in a roost and the confidence that we have in that number. So when you get into the hundreds or thousands, that line of sight estimation of bats is pretty terrible. So that's when we start to use our video equipment. We rely more heavily on that.
Like if they have a rot,
Do they move away, or what happens? Do they just leave it?
Yeah, because it just falls down below.
Right, and they don't mind having
No. Because usually they're pretty far up. Like they'll be, 80 feet up, so the fauna doesn't really affect them. Okay. And usually roosts aren't. There's one really large roost in the park. It's on Liberty Cap, and that has tens of thousands of bats in it, and there is a really large guano pile there. But again, every year with the snow, it washes away. So it's not like stacking up towards their roost.
I was just curious if like they leave, maybe if it's not, I know this is on the wall, but if the bats are say in the house, or you know how you were saying sometimes they'll go in the building in the park, would they stay in there even with the guano not being able to do the roof?
Yeah. Yeah, they'll keep staying there. Yeah. I don't think germ theory was introduced to them.
Yeah. Sometimes animals do move away, when there's too much.
Yeah, and there's some people who think that like sometimes if you like say you have a bat box, I haven't confirmed this, so this is just anecdotal information. But some people will be like, oh, if you have a bat box and you swipe the inside of the bat box with urine or like some, form of like urine or guano, then bats are more likely to like come into the box. I have no clue if that's actually true, but I have heard that sentiment being conveyed. So it could be like a sign of like, okay, I want to come back to this place because I can smell.
Yeah, because I was curious too. We're doing the bat box.
Mhm.
I mean, I haven't talked to later about it, but we're doing the bat box at a garden that's wild. They're really wild in this area, and they were saying something about cleaning it out, and like, you have to clean it out, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, you probably want to clean it out just to like get rid of it. Like it's not benefiting them to have it around. You can also use that as fertilizer.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so once we've classified roofs, my tech last year made this diagram just to like kind of go through how complex, like and chaotic, just thinking about all of this stuff was. But we follow up with emergent surveys to find the confidence of bats when we have those large roosts. So far, the Big Law Bat program, I thought I changed that, no, I didn't change it. The Big Law Bat program has had 5 field seasons. I can't give you any information on the 5th one because I lost access to data midway through. But as of last year, as of 2024, the end of our 2024 season, we had surveyed a total of 78 routes in the park and over 236 pitches of vertical terrain. And in total, we located just shy of 70 roosts. So approximately half of those were unoccupied, but of those, we've documented the characteristics. We've returned and documented the characteristics of 22 of those. So it's like this is an incredibly time-consuming endeavor, and we had a grant for 3 years to kind of come up with the methods. And then just this last year, we've been able to like implement those methods and really get a little bit of data from developing those methods. So now, when we had that method for carrying out research in the cliffs, we were able to start asking questions, and that's the fun part for scientists. So we want to know, are there differences in rock roost selection among species in Yosemite National Park? So through testing hypotheses such as, do larger bodied bats need larger crevices in total area width and depth and width to accommodate their larger body size potentially? So we found that Brazilian three-tailed bats tend to roost at significantly lower heights above ground when compared with species of the genus Myotis. We have a lot of different species of Myotis. But this is interesting because anecdotally, there have been several instances where we found Brazilian three-tails co-roosting with Myotis. So we do have different species co-roosting with one another. But it also appears that smaller bodied bats tend to roost closer to the crevice opening, so to like the airflow potentially, than larger bodied bats. Although only Myotis species roost at like a significantly different depth than all of the other species that we looked at. It could be a residual from ambient air temperature. We're not sure why. We've just noticed that is the pattern. And as we collect more data, we might be able to parse out if the time of year plays into that, if the weather plays into that, or roost site selection plays into that. And so we observed differences in the roost height above ground. You don't actually need to understand the box plots. We just include them because we just need something for people to look at while we're talking. So while we observed differences in the roost height above ground and the depth of that in the crack, we didn't see significant differences in the width of the crack that they were in for any targeted species. So no good data there. So yeah,
I'm sorry, am I right in thinking then that none of these bats spend the winter in the Yosemite, right?
some do.
Or do
Yeah,
they?
so we have both resident bats and migratory bats, and we have some bats that will go and hibernate, and then other bats that stay active throughout the winter.
Oh,
Specifically the bats that we've found that stay active through the winter are Western Mastiff bats. Those bats can travel farther. They're the ones with the 22-inch wingspan. So they can fly down to the Central Valley potentially. They can go quite a ways in a night. So they're probably not foraging in Yosemite. They're probably foraging somewhere that's a bit warmer. Yeah. Yeah, so with our kind of preliminary data set, that's 1 year of us getting data, we saw a difference of roost height above ground, so Brazilian three tails roost closer to the ground, and a depth of roosting bats, so larger versus smaller. Those smaller bats like to be closer to the outfits. But total width and width of the crevice don't appear to be different among the 4 species that we looked at. So does that mean that there are differences in rock roost selection for those species? Not necessarily. There are scientific uncertainties that we haven't been able to parse out because we just don't have enough data yet. So that could be time of year, maternity versus solitary roost, and sample size. We don't have that many observation points yet. So we need to keep making these comparisons and keep taking data so that we can have a more robust data set to make analyses from. Yeah. And so similar to the way that we work with citizen climbers to make observations of bats, we're also looking to expand the number of sites that are using our methods throughout North America, really anywhere, actually. I don't know what's in North America, but that's just North America, so maybe that's why. These data will allow us to answer more questions and see like what's consistent in a species throughout the country, or if it's localized. And we can ask more questions about cliff-dwelling bats, specific to like species, or just bats as a whole, body size and such. And so there are 2 official big wall bat programs, one in Zion and one in Yosemite. And there's another potential big wall bat program that we were onboarding this year at New River Gorge National Park. And through presenting our methods at various conferences, we've also gotten some sister parks in Canada. Skaha Provincial Park was asked about using our methods, and then also climbers for bat conservation. It's also potentially using our methods, and we're collaborating. We were collaborating with them. So looking into the future, in Yosemite, we were solidifying our program to address kind of the paucity of data regarding Western bat ecology. And we're growing our data set through locating and describing more roosts, collaborating with more parks, congregating data, providing a database framework for various collectives that are collecting similar information. And we are monitoring for the presence of PD in the park to see how our bat populations are affected by PD. Because as with COVID, it's not really a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And once the ball gets rolling, it just keeps going, and you can't keep it on a cruise ship. So one other big question that I was seeking to kind of answer is I want to know how bats that reside in Yosemite may be foraging in the Central Valley. And that's something that I was trying to find funding for the program, because I thought that would be quite interesting, just to kind of link like the importance of mountain. I find that one thing that is increasingly important is, showing people that there are links in agriculture, urban areas to rural areas. And so I wanted to figure out if we had bats that were potentially, going down and foraging on insects in the Central Valley. Maybe make farmers or help farmers care more for bats in the mountain. But unfortunately for the Yosemite Big Wall Bat program, our future is a little unknown right now. I was let go earlier this year. There was a government hiring freeze, and there was a termination of the USGS program that we collaborate with. It was dissolved, and my team was entirely disassembled because of that hiring freeze as well. So it isn't to say that the program doesn't have funding. We actually do have funding. It's just to say that we are running into various roadblocks in the sciences in the park. And because all of our work was funded by Yosemite Conservancy, they continue to fund science projects in the park because they understand the importance of that. They love bats, as I hope all of you do now. But yeah, so all this is to say that resources in sciences are under threat in the National Park Service. We already kind of operate on skeletal systems. We don't get, although we get funding, we don't get much funding. There's not much room in the park anyways. But recently the park is deprioritizing sciences. And so an example of this is they have gotten 50% of the bed slots for seasonal workers next year. So what that means is all of our projects that already operate on skeletal systems, I had 3 people for all of this work. Now I can have one, or I could have one or 1.5, but they would round down. And so this is this is happening all throughout all of the resources in the park. So that's the restoration projects. It's the vegetative projects. It's anything related to the plants, the animals. It's the Fisher project. It's the avian projects. It's everything. And so what I'm asking people to do today, and I have a typo here, which I will correct, is please email the park and tell them about how important the resources are in the park. And this underscore should actually be a period. I don't know if we can change that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, this one right here. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the superintendent. He was just put in, well, actually he was put into place 6 weeks ago. So although there's a hiring freeze, they can still have the superintendent be hired. And then this is the acting deputy superintendent. And so I want to put the pressure on them to continue to help resources in the park, because our old superintendent prioritized that every single day. And that's why we were able to do remarkable things in the park. And that's why we're able to do prescribed burns in the park. It's why we're able to take care of the park in a way that will make the park last for the future. Because the mission of the Park Service is to ensure that the future generations can recreate in the park in the same way that we do today. And the way that we're going to do that is through funding sciences, because we need to know about the park to take care of it. So that's my soapbox.
Do you think that focus, or his focus, or whatever, the new focus is more on just money, getting people to stay there, that kind of thing?
It's hard to say. What I know about him is he was in the military, and anytime someone has come to him to ask about what he's going to do about community or sciences in the park, he's had a politician answer. And so, I don't think that the military is bad, but I think what I'm trying to say with it is he has written some pretty egregious things in relation to his time in the military. And so that's why I brought it up. But yeah, what I should actually say is I think that, so the beds that we're going to go to resources will then go to law enforcement facilities. I don't know about I don't know what the status of their bed slots are, but it'll go to more of the like ranger type people. Yeah. It's something that we battle with like every year is, buying for slots, but we've always found like a pretty harmonious balance, and cutting 50% of the resources beds is pretty devastating for us. Yeah.
Are there predators that go into those roosts, and where and when are they young?
Yeah, great question. Oh yeah, I'll go to my thank you, and then question slide. Yeah, there are predators that don't necessarily go into the roost, but peregrine falcons will prey on bats. So yeah, if you ever go to the base of Liberty Cap and you're there, in the summerish time, and you find this elusive guano pile that's quite large, and you stay there till sunset, you will see peregrine falcons preying on bats, and them kind of doing this like dance. And actually, this is kind of an aside, but there was a video that was just found of urban bats, and there was a mouse that jumped onto a bat to prey on the bat. It was remarkable. Yeah. And then what was the second part of your question?
When and where are the young born?
Yeah. So the young are born sometime around June, and they're born in the roosts. Yeah. So that large maternity colony just has a bunch of pups. So their offspring are called pups.
And how long do they stay?
They'll stay there for a couple of months. Yeah.
How soon have they fly?
I think it's about 40 days. Well, it depends on the species.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Mexican free-tailed that I'm thinking of, Corky would know best. I think it's about 30 to 40 days, but I'm not certain on that. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't studied the physiology of bats as much as I've just studied kind of like the ecology of like where they're recent and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thought about this before, but bats are active at night, and the mosquitoes went dead, when you think of them, but I guess there are a lot of insects that are available at night again to eat.
Yeah. So bats will eat. So they'll eat. Bats emerge kind of. There's variants, but bats different species will emerge at different times. Some will emerge right before sunset, so when mosquitoes are still out. And then the ones that kind of emerge later, and as the night goes on, they'll forage on things like moths. We have one bat in the park, the pallid bat, that will forage on scorpions. They can actually land on the ground, and they have so Chiropteran means hand wings, and so if you look at a bat wing, they're actually just hands that have grown, and like this part of your hand has extended, and so their thumbs are really large, and they'll actually crawl on the ground, digging their thumbs in, and they'll crawl after scorpions. They eat crickets that are out. Yeah.
There was an online question. What will happen to these very important studies now that they are no longer working in Yosemite?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There is the potential opportunity that the Yosemite Conservancy is really trying for us, and at some point there won't be a hiring freeze, and there will be people who are not blacklisted from the government that are put into the positions again. It's just, this has slowed things down. I don't know. It's just slowed things down. And so there are certain funding projects that, we had to spend money by the end of the year, but there's no one there to spend the money. So the questions will just continue to remain questions, unfortunately. There is some amount of people that are working in the private sector to contribute to this. That's the bats, the climbers for bat conservation. And so they're also picking up, they are also potentially picking up where we left off, but not specifically in Yosemite. Yeah. Yeah.
So, the focus for is the wall, your wall bats, so they're roosting and crack right through it. Would those same species also be, barred or snag roosters as well, or would that be kind of separate?
It depends. It totally depends on the species. There are some species that will roost in the bark of trees as well as rocks. There are some species like the hoary bats, they only roost in trees. And so, yeah, it really depends on the species. It also can depend on like local populations and what they prefer. Yeah. It's, there's just so much variance. I mean, it's kind of like people in a way where you, like, if you ask a question about like, well, like, does everyone like ranch homes, or some people into like craftsmen as well? Like you're like, well, there might be like a town that's more ranch than craftsman, and bats are just like that. I'm not trying to anthropomorphize, but yeah, it's super variable. But there are ones that do go into dark, and like giant sequoias have a lot of bats in them.
Have there been any studies on migratory patterns of bat species?
There have. I'm not a specialist in them, but
How far do they go?
Mexican freetails will travel thousands of miles. They'll go all the way up to Washington, down to the equator. Yeah.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Joslin for an excellent.
Porky says gestation 90 days. And then, Porky, do you know how many days until flight? Maybe she knows. Varies. Okay, yeah. Yeah, totally. Classic. Thanks, Porky.
I talked to Courtney because she presented here a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was very excited.
Yeah. Yeah, we had she actually took some of our pups that fell from a roost this last year and raised them. Yeah, that's cute. That was awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
So you had mentioned probiotics.
Oh, right. Sorry, it's not an ingestible probiotic. It's a probiotic that is like put onto the environment. Like
Where'd you go today?
Not at like a large scale.
It was.
Yeah, just because it's still hard to find roots. Some roosts are in trees, some roosts are building.
Hopefully,
So it's like
this weekend.
it's kind of like a proof of concept. It can work, but the implementation is quite different. Yeah, yeah, where to put it, access the